What's up, Everett? I'm going to try to just give like a brief overview of embodiment, or at least that's what I'm going to try to do. It'll probably end up being a lot longer than that, than brief. But there's two directions to approach it from. There's the sort of ground-up direction, which is to approach it by redefining biology, or I could approach it from the philosophical and redefine epistemology, because embodiment requires that we do both of these things, because it's in sharp contrast to most of the Western philosophical tradition, which basically, since Plato has posited a separation between mind and body. For Plato, it was a separation between form and substance, between time and eternity, and he associated the exterior world out there with mind. With Christianity and Descartes' scientific method, the mind was removed from the world, the forms were removed from the world, and put into the mind, the human soul, given to each body by God, in Descartes' language. And the soul or mind has access to innate ideas, which are just Plato's eternal forms that exist in the world, turned into this mental archetype or representation. And modern-day cognitive science may have sort of downgraded this spiritual idea of a soul with innate ideas into this neural process, which is essentially symbolic, that allows us to represent the world by picking out certain salient features of the objective external world and building an internal model of it. The embodied approaches want to say that this is a misunderstanding of what human language is really. Descartes, of course, thought that animals didn't have a soul, and I'm willing to bet it's because animals couldn't talk. And Descartes saw language as the essence of man. The I that thinks is what creates our being. So immediately rationality and logic and mathematics become essential features of human existence, because those are the real firm ways to grasp the world as it exists without you, without your subjective innate passions, in other words. Though I scratched that word innate. Descartes wouldn't say the passions are innate. They're necessary, but what's innate is what's in the soul. The body is sort of this thing living in sin, God's accident maybe, I don't know. Something that essentially doesn't belong to us. And so, most of the representational cognitive science still understands their science in this way metaphorically, that the mind is essentially the rational symbolic processor called language that allows us to make intellectual judgments and plan for the future and rationally argue and logically understand things, and that's who we essentially are, or should strive to be. And then there's this body that's just instinctual and blind and stupid and lustful, that it just wants what's in its own individual interest. The embodied approaches are saying that, for example, your cognitive system is more than just your brain. It's your entire body system. It's your cardiovascular system. It's your immune system. It's your endocrine system. All working in concert to bring forth a life. And bringing forth a life is also bringing forth a world. The bacterial flagellum swimming up a glucose gradient is just as conscious of a world as a human being is, though the human being's consciousness of the world is far more complex, and the human being has formed more structural couplings to the world. It's found more pathways, like the eyes found light, and the ears found sound, and the tongue found taste, and the skin touch, and the mind found spirit, or whatever it is that allows us to have culture. The mind found language, the innate ideas. So the implications for language, it means everything's metaphorical. All of our thought activity is a function of the way our brains are structured, rather than the way the objective world is structured. Everything we say is based on not only our brain structures, but our social structures as well. Our understanding of language is taught to us by others, by a community. So, people like Noam Chomsky, he's a representationalist, would say that language is somehow built into the brain, and it's an innate thing for us to be able to accommodate this public language, because we have these almost mechanical structures in our brains activated by genes that build language. And so this is the real driving force behind the idea that we could understand cognition in terms of symbolic processing, when really, or at least from the embodied approach, language is part of our experience, but language is essentially a biological activity. It isn't an objective representation of the world. We can't logically picture reality with human language, because, well, like Wittgenstein said, the meaning of a word is the way that it's used in a particular social context. It has no independent meaning in and of itself, but within that context. I guess I'll leave it at that for now.